Now you are able to hear me?
Yes, yes. Should we start the program? Yeah.
Yes, yes, please.
Thank you. Yes, Reena, you can go online.
We are live on Facebook.
Yes, we are on live.
All right. So can Fiona start?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. I extend a warm welcome to the esteemed dignitaries and all our participants who have joined on this lovely Monday afternoon to participate in the national webinar on transformative constitutionalism organized by the Faculty of Law in collaboration with the Institute of Leadership and Governance, the Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda, as part of the third edition of National Youth Summit. We request our participants to please keep their microphone on mute mode and your camera on off mode during the entire session. Please do not use screen sharing option at any point of time during the webinar. At any point, if you feel that you have a question, please add your question to the chat box and our moderators will go through them. As we move on with our webinar, I will request Ms. Devyani to play our university song. All participants are requested to stand for the same.
Ma'am, is it audible?
No. You have to play it, beta. You're not
Yes,
starting.
I play.
Thank you, everyone. An academician of impeccable repute, her contribution to the field of social work has no comparison. She has multiple publications and has participated in countless seminars. A wonderful teacher and a dynamic leader with a clear vision of the future. She has always led by example. It is my privilege to invite Professor Dr. Bhavna Mehta, Dean, Officer on Special Duty, Faculty of Law, Head of the Department, Faculty of Social Work, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, and the Director of this webinar to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Fiona. Good afternoon, everyone. Namaskar. Honorable, respected Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Parimal Vyas. Chief guest of today's webinar, Honorable former Chief Justice of the Apex Court of our country, Justice Deepak Mishra ji. Advisor to this webinar, organized as part of the National Youth Summit, and a Senate and Syndicate member of the University, Dr. Jigar Inamdar. Director of the Institute of Leadership and Governance, our partner in organizing this summit, Dr. Reena Bhatia. Convener of this webinar, Dr. Archana Gadekar and Shri Umang Modi. The Chief Engineer of this National Youth Summit, a young mind behind it, and our own very student who is coordinating this event, Advocate Siddharth Pawar. My dear colleagues of the university and at Faculty of Law, students and participants from across the country who have joined us virtually in this webinar, Series 1, organized as part of the National Youth Summit. At the outset, let me extend my warm welcome to all of you to this much awaited event that we have been meaning to organize for past 6 months. Earlier, it was scheduled on March 21st, 2020, which had to be postponed due to emergence of the pandemic COVID-19, followed by the countrywide lockdown. But I'm so very happy that today, exactly after 3 months, we have presence of 2 of our distinguished guests with us. Honorable Justice Mishra ji is a renowned name in the country, especially among those who are actively engaged in the crusade for human rights, civil liberties, and rights concerning citizens. His path-breaking judgments and decisions have become important landmarks in the legal history of our country. Sir, we are extremely delighted with your presence amidst us. I extend my hearty welcome to you. Today, the university, Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, resumes back its functioning after lockdown period and the vacation for the teaching staff nearly of almost 3 months. First, due to lockdown, followed by formal announcement of summer vacation. But let me tell you all that we had never stopped. While everything was halted physically, this university had continued to thrive with more vibrancy and zeal. It would not at all be exaggerated to say that MSU did not stop or halted its functioning during this extraordinary time, as we had our online teaching classes, webinars, training programs, meetings, you name it, and it was all full on. And the driving force behind this buoyancy is no other than the head of the institute, the head of our university, ever energetic, our leader, Professor Parimal Vyas. Sir, Faculty of Law is extremely happy today to have you amidst us. Our long wait is over today as you have finally made it to be with us in spite of your very busy schedule. I'm very happy to welcome you, sir, as well.
Namaskar.
The National Youth Summit, organized by Faculty of Law in collaboration with Institute for Leadership and Governance, is actually a students' initiative. However, as we all know, students' ideas conceptualization requires nurturing, mentoring, and protection. And today, here we have with us an iconic youth leader of our country who is the guiding force behind many youth initiatives of our state. The Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda is blessed for having him around and benefit from his exceptional abilities to mobilize youth in the right direction. It is due to his vision and hard work that we have the Institute of Leadership and Governance, one of its kind in the country, set up at the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. I'm very happy to welcome you to our very own Dr. Jigar Inamdar, who has played a very important role in the execution of the idea of Dr. Siddharth Pawar. Faculty of Law, one of the well-recognized institutes of the country, is imparting legal education at the undergraduate level through its 5 years BA LLB integrated program, its PG program like LLB and LLM, as well as a doctoral study in the subject of law. The faculty is recognized by Bar Council of India and has ranked 7th in India in the category of top law schools in the excellence by Competition Success Review, 9th in the academic excellence, 11th in the Indian top law colleges by Outlook magazine in 2019. Faculty keeps pace with needs and demands of the society by bringing in newer perspective and changes in its teaching curriculum as well as extracurricular activities. The faculty is endowed with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Chair, wherein every year a stalwart from the field of Constitution of India is invited to deliver a public lecture. Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, Professor Madhav Menon, Justice S.J. Mukhopadhyay, Justice Sujata Manohar are some of those who have delivered lectures as part of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Chair. Apart from this, due to the idea germinated by our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Vyas, the faculty has set up a Center for Intellectual Property Right recently and is on its way to set up a Center for Arbitration and Mediation soon. The faculty organizes a number of student-centric activities as well as programs for the growth and development of faculty members and legal fraternity. The National Youth Summit is one such program, third in the row. This summit in the past has seen presence of renowned advocates, youth leaders, and civil society organizations, representatives who have inspired, motivated students with their presence. And today is once again, we have with us those who have made big in their field to guide us, lead us on the path of justice, equality, and fraternity, values that we uphold as a nation. Thank you everyone for joining us in such a large number. As I understand, we have around 900 registered delegates, including students, academics, practicing advocates, as well as representatives from government and civil society organizations. I once again welcome you all, one and all. I know all of us are very curious to hear our speaker, your Lordship, who has chosen to speak on a very challenging topic, acknowledging and responding to the hierarchical structure and power relationships within a society, a need of an hour, transformative constitutionalism. Let us learn from him. Thank you. Once again, welcome all of you. Over to you, Fiona. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for the warm welcome. A ship sailing in the vast sea needs a good captain, a person who can guide the ship and crew through both smooth and rough waters. In a similar manner, our university is constantly guided through the experience and perseverance of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Parimal Vyas. I request Dr. Archana Gadekar, Associate Professor, Faculty of Law, to give an introduction of Professor Vyas and invite him to deliver the opening address.
Thank you, Fiona. Honorable Mr. Justice Deepak Mishra, former Chief Justice of India, Respected Professor Parimal Vyas, the Vice Chancellor of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, respected Professor Bhavna Mehta, the Dean Faculty of Law, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, Dr. Jigar Inamdar, the advisor to the summit and the founder director of Institute of Leadership and Governance, Dr. Reena Bhatia, the webinar joint director and the present director of Institute of Leadership and Governance, Mr. Siddharth Pawar, the enthusiastic student coordinator of this event, my colleagues at the faculty and at the university, and dear participants who have joined us virtually. A very warm good afternoon to you all. Matter of honor to introduce respected Professor Parimal Vyas sir, the Vice Chancellor of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, who is an academician and academic administrator par excellence to this virtual August gathering. His impeccable and proven track record as an able and a visionary administrator has enabled him to excel in his leadership role. Presently, this is Sir's second term as Vice Chancellor of this illustrious university. Sir brings with him a rich blend of scholarship, professional integrity, and administrative competence. Under his leadership, the university has scaled newer heights. Besides achieving re-accreditation of NAAC with A grade in 2016, the Maharaja Sayajirao University has been placed in the World Times Higher Education Ranking from 2016 to 2018 and also in QS ranking in the year 2018. The Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda has been adjudged as the best university and has won 3 awards conferred by the Education Department of Government of Gujarat. Professor Vyas is having great vision with originality of thoughts, which has led this university to the top position in Gujarat and 33rd in India's top government university league rankings by EW India. Sir has the distinction of being the first dual professor of Faculty of Management Studies and possesses more than 15 years of teaching, research, and administrative experience as professor of this university. Sir has authored around 9 books and has more than 130 research publications to his credit, several out of which have been awarded the Best Research Paper Awards. Professor Vyas presents a rare blend of excellence in the area of higher education in India. In both his roles as an academician and as an academic administrator, his focus has always been on quality, integrity, intellectual caliber, and dedication to teaching, research, and academic administration. It is a matter of great pride to invite such a towering personality to deliver the opening remarks and set the tone of the webinar. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Namaskar to all of you. Thank you, Dr. Archana. At the outset, let me congratulate the entire team of the Faculty of Law, Professor Bhavna Mehta, the dynamic Dean of the Faculty of Law, Dr. Archana, and the man behind the drive of these event which we are organizing after a long wait, our own student Siddharth Pawar. We are also organizing this under the National Youth Summit under the leadership of Dr. Jigar Inamdar, the founder director of the Institute of Leadership and Governance, Dr. Reena Bhatia, the current director of ILG. And let me at the outset share with all of you that we all here, the attendees across the national level, the members of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, we are all inspired and blessed with the presence of Honorable Sri Deepak Mishra ji. Our namaskar and heartfelt welcome to you, sir. As you all know, sir has served as former Chief Justice of India, Supreme High Court of India. And he is a strong upholder of constitutional values and citizen rights, human rights, and strong defender of the rights to equality, liberty, and dignity, as well as constitutional morality and principles of transformative constitutionalism, on which we are going to listen to him. Sir, it is a matter of great pleasure and honor to have you here amidst the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. And my greetings to the Faculty of Law and all the members of the Faculty of Law for having thought of organizing this wonderful webinar on a topic which is of a great significance and relevance in today's time. Before I give couple of my thoughts on this topic, which is of a great significance, let me share with the Honorable former Chief Justice of India, Supreme High Court of India, Deepak Misra Sharji, that Sir, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda has a great legacy and heritage, because we have from our own university, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkarji, who in fact was a research scholar in the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, and we know his contribution in the constitution of the world's biggest democracy, that's our own country, India. The other experts who really made a huge contribution in making of the drafting of this constitution, which we enjoy today, the rights as a civilians, Sri Kannelal Munsiji, Sri V.K. Parikh, and with great pleasure, I am happy to share with all of you the first Honorable Vice Chancellor of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, Dr. Srimati Hansaben Mehta, was also a part of the team. At this juncture, I must again place on record the sincere support that we have received for the development and building the Faculty of Law, for nurturing the law education in the entire Gujarat state and in the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, Professor H.C. Dhodakia, who also served as member of Law Commission. We all know that Constitution and constitutionalism is in fact it's a philosophy. We believe in its supremacy, and in fact all rights that we enjoy as civilians, because of the deep rootedness of this constitutionalism in its efforts to realize the aspirations for universal human happiness and harmony. It's a supreme law of our country, and as we all know, it provides equal rights and protection to all of us. And the basic values of constitutionalism can have a meaning only when the vision of our constitution can become the reality. We are all aware of the constitutional adjudication, so far it has seen 104 amendments, but then the various adjudication that has happened, it has the urgent task of defining and redefining the basic constitutional concepts, which keeps on changing in a desperate world. Many judgments in the past we all have seen that has come from the desk, from the highest, the Court of Law, the Supreme Court of India, with regard to public interest litigation, be it protection of right of prisoners, be it the rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgenders and queers. There are judgments that we have received with regard to adultery law, unconstitutional, or the recent judgment of Sabarimala judgment, or declaring right to privacy. Maybe when Honorable Justice, His Lordship is with us, I think it would be a matter of great pleasure and honor to listen to his views today on this webinar of a great significance. And as we all know that judicial creativity has played a decisive role in realizing the constitutional dreams as envisioned by the framers of the Constitution. I'm sure the webinar shall focus on the reflections of the transformative constitutionalism in the recent judicial decisions, And it has brought a new approach which was not generally imagined. It enjoys a certain reading of the constitutional text that avoids formalism, pure positivism, and legislativism, and advances and interpretation that acknowledges and responds to the reality of hierarchical structures and power relations within a society. Once again, on behalf of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, the entire parivar of the university, we welcome the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India, Deepak Mishra ji, our greetings and our namaskar, and we express our deep sense of gratitude for having thought of addressing the youth of this country, because this webinar, as Professor Bhavna Mehta said, is attended by hundreds of the young people, the practicing advocates, and then we are live on the Facebook. Sir, we owe it to you, and once again, we welcome you for your blessings and inspirational address and guidance to all the young students of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, where they are with us today in this webinar. Thank you, one, and all the very best to all of you for this webinar. Over to you, Professor Bhavna Mehta.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for those inspiring words. Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, "We cannot always build the future for our youth, but we can build our youth for the future." There are very few people who echo this sentiment and work towards building a strong and dedicated youth for the future. Dr. Jigar Inamdar happens to be one of those people. At present, he is the consultant cum regional director of the Indian Council of Cultural Relations, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India. He is a member of the Senate and member of the syndicate, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. He is an advisor to the Institute of Leadership and Governance and the Triveni Devi Kashinath Agrawal Management Development Center, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. He is well known for organizing various events, seminars, and workshops. He has also organized for students various scholarship and internship programs, and therefore he is looked up by the students. All the students greatly look up to his achievements, and maybe that is why he is someone who has spearheaded this particular national youth movement. I invite Dr. Inamdar to say a few words about the National Youth Summit, which is in its third edition this year.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Honorable former Chief Justice of the Sarvoch Nyay Mandir of Bharat, आदरणीय दीपक मिश्रा जी, हमारे सभी सकारात्मक कार्यों के पीछे की शक्ति ऐसे हमारे कुलपति आदरणीय परिमल व्यास जी, फैकल्टी के डीन, जिनके कांस्टेंट सपोर्ट के कारण विद्यार्थी इस प्रकार की एक्टिविटीज प्लान करके एग्जीक्यूट कर पा रहे हैं, ऐसे प्रोफेसर भावना मेहता मैम। इस पूरे विचार के पीछे जिस युवा की ताकत जुड़ी हुई है, और आज से 3 साल पहले पहली बार जब नेशनल यूथ समिट नाम का कोई इनिशिएटिव होना चाहिए, ऐसा एक विचार लेके हमें मिलने वाला एक आदर्श युवा की व्याख्या में समाहित होने का प्रयास कर रहा एडवोकेट सिद्धार्थ पवार। नेशनल यूथ समिट के बारे में 2 शब्द कहना यह आज मेरी जिम्मेदारी है, और मैं इस विषय के साथ शुरुआत से जुड़ा हुआ हूं। इस कारण इतना ही कह सकता हूं कि युवा एक असीमित शक्ति का प्रवाह है। इस असीमित शक्ति के प्रवाह समान युवा को निरंतर किसी न किसी सकारात्मक प्रवृत्ति में प्रवृत्त रखना, यह समाज की और विश्वविद्यालय की जिम्मेदारी है। और पहली बार सिद्धार्थ और उसकी टीम जब इस विचार को लेकर आए थे, तब से लेके युवाओं को समाज के साथ विभिन्न सकारात्मक मुद्दों को जोड़ना, यह जिम्मेदारी समझकर एक नेशनल यूथ समिट का आयोजन हुआ। पहली और दूसरी दोनों नेशनल यूथ समिट में एक सकारात्मकता का वातावरण, एक सक्रियता का वातावरण युवाओं को प्राप्त हुआ और आज इस संविधान के साथ जुड़े हुए विषय को लेकर भारत के सर्वोच्च न्याय मंदिर के मुख्य न्यायाधीश रहे ऐसे आदरणीय दीपक मिश्रा जी को जब हमने पहली बार इनवाइट किया था, हम चाहते थे, सोचते थे, आयोजन किया था कि आदरणीय सर हमारे बीच आएंगे, हमारे बीच बैठकर इस विषय की बात कर पाएंगे। पर इस स्थिति में जब वर्चुअल रूप से इस विषय को आपके सम्मुख रखने का जब विचार किया गया, तब भी उनका आशीर्वाद, उनकी अनुमति हमारे साथ थी और आज वह हमारे बीच उपस्थित हो। तो आपके और उनके बीच ज्यादा समय न लेते हुए सिर्फ 2 बात आप सबके ज्ञानवर्धन हेतु मैं कहना चाहता हूं। पहला यह कि संविधान के संबंधित आज का यह वेबिनार है। 1947 में देश आजाद हुआ, उसके 30 साल पहले, और 1950 में भारत को अपना संविधान मिला, उसके 33 साल पहले 1917 में वडोदरा स्टेट का अपना संविधान हुआ करता था। महाराजा सयाजीराव गायकवाड़ जी ने अपने कार्यकाल में संविधान के आधार पे अपना प्रशासन चलाने का प्रयास किया था और भारत देश का संविधान बनने से पहले जिस राज्य का अपना संविधान हुआ करता था, ऐसे वडोदरा राज्य के हमारे महाराजा, जिनके नाम से हमारी यूनिवर्सिटी है। और एक और गौरव की बात जो मैं जोड़ना चाहता हूं, पूरे भारत में जो भी कोर्ट्स हैं उनको कोर्ट के नाम से जाना जाता होगा। वडोदरा ऐसी संस्कारी नगरी है जिस संस्कारी नगरी में कोर्ट को भी न्याय मंदिर कहा जाता है और इस संस्कारी नगरी के संस्कार को चरितार्थ करते हुए संविधान के साथ जुड़ा हुआ यह विशेष विषय लेकर जब पूरी टीम आप सबके सामने उपस्थित है, ज्यादा समय न लेते हुए एडवोकेट सिद्धार्थ पवार को और पूरी टीम को, आदरणीय भावना बहन, अर्चना बहन, फियोना मैम और पूरी टीम को हृदयपूर्वक मैं अभिनंदन देना चाहता हूं। आदरणीय रीना मैम, हमारे इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ लीडरशिप एंड गवर्नेंस के डायरेक्टर, सभी सकारात्मक कार्यों में हमारी शक्ति, उनको भी हृदयपूर्वक बधाई देता हूं। और प्रोफेसर परिमल व्यास जी, जिनका सकारात्मक सहयोग हमेशा मिलता रहा है और जिनके ज्ञान से आज हम सब नवपल्लवित होने वाले हैं, ऐसे ऑनरेबल दीपक मिश्रा जी का फिर एक बार ऋण स्वीकार करते हुए मैं NYS 3 के इस तृतीय वर्जन में आप सबका हृदयपूर्वक स्वागत करते हुए मेरी बात पूर्ण करता हूं। आप सबका धन्यवाद।
Thank you, sir. Thank you for those motivating words. Our National Youth Summit is best represented by the youth who has led the team of students who have worked endlessly to make this event possible. His dedication and dynamism is unparalleled among his peers. And thanks to these qualities, he has been the student coordinator of the Youth Summit for the past 3 years. I now invite Advocate Siddharth Pawar, the student coordinator of the national webinar, to give an introduction of our chief guest, Honorable Mr. Justice Deepak Mishra, former Chief Justice of India.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, all the dignitaries and dear participants. I am pleased and honored to introduce our chief guest for today's webinar, Honorable Mr. Justice Deepak Mishra. Honorable Mr. Justice Deepak Mishra has served as the 45th Chief Justice of India from 28 August 2017 till 2nd October 2018. Honorable Mr. Justice Deepak Mishra, a former judge of Orissa and Madhya Pradesh High Court and former Chief Justice of Patna and Delhi High Court. He is bold and humane judge. As a judge, Justice Mishra has delivered several judgments in the field of human rights, civil liabilities, and rights conquering to live the citizens. He has also decided the important issues pertaining to the commercial and the contractual matters, the corporate law, and issue in the field of taxation and arbitration. while he was a judge of the High Court of Madhya Pradesh. He has struck down the amendment to the act that provided gradually taking away the grant in aid from the educational institutions. The decision saved the livelihood of the thousands of the teachers. As a chief guest of Delhi High Court, he directed the Delhi police to upload the FIR on their website within 24 hours of their launching, so as the unable to accuse to have accessed the FIR and allegation of filing appropriate application before the court for redressal of the grievance. In public interest litigation, he had directed the shelter home in Delhi to run properly and issue the direction to provide the facilities so that the people would be a position to live with the dignity and the shelter home. Adoption of the humanitarian approach, Honorable Justice Misra, as Chief Justice of Delhi High Court, had also taken a suo motu cognizance when the helpless woman had died while giving birth to the child on the roadside, and issued the direction to make arrangement for the child and also how to take care of the helpless woman. As a judge, Supreme Court of India, Justice Misra has delivered the several landmark judgments as a contribute immensely to Indian constitutional jurisprudence, and each of his judgments can be said that constitute the watershed moment in Indian judicial history for the annexing the scope of the Golden Treaty of the Rights under the Constitution. In historic unanimous rules on Section 377 of IPC, while presiding over the Constitution bench, Chief Justice Misra practically struck down, said the provision, stating it integral and indefensible and manifestly arbitrary, and emphasized on the principle of the individuality, liability, and dignity of the individual rights to privacy, equality of rights, and highlighted the constitutional principle of the transformative constitutionalism and constitutional morality and the doctrine of the progressive realization and non-rectigation of the rights. Chief Justice Misra has a part of the bench that struck down the century of the old Section 497 of the IPC, considering the provision to be the unequal and arbitrary. It was a bench led by the Justice Misra that pronounced the landmark ruling lifting the ban on the entry of the woman into the Sabrimala temple, thus voicing the option against the discrimination against the woman of the particular age group. Again, a bench headed by the Justice Misra, Charu Khurana versus Union of India, ended the 59-year-old practice in the Indian film industry that banned women for the classified as the makeup artist, stating that the such practice was the constitutionally impermissible and discrimination of the against the woman. In unanimous rule in common cause versus Union of India, the Constitutional Bench, led by the Chief Justice Mishra, recognized the rights to die with the dignity and the fundamental rights, the smoothing the process of dying, terminating ill person affected the vintage, the state, and allow the passive enthusiasm and issue the guidelines for the advance and directive in the grades. Having the rights, freedom of speech and expression, while stating that ban on the movie The Padmavat by the certain state, the Chief Justice Mishra held that the cinema as the art of the impermissible part of the right, free speech and expression. On similar lines, Justice Mishra has dismissed the petition seeking ban on the Malayalam novel Mesa, while observing that the culture of the ban booking the impacts of the free flow idea and the affront the freedom of speech, thoughts, and expression. The rights to choice as an integral part of rights to life and liberty has emphasized in the judgment in the Hadia versus Sakti Vihani cases. In another path-breaking judgments, Chief Justice Misra, while presiding over the constitutional bench, penned judgment asking the Parliament frame law ensure the decriminalization of the politics and the further issue direction. The aim at giving citizens to inform the choice that influence the culture of the purity in politics by the deciding for the wide publicity criminal case pending against the candidates in view of the rights of citizens to inform about the anti-state of the candidates contesting elections. Justice Misra led the bench which rejected 1993 Mumbai serial blast convict Yaqub Mohammed appeal to stop the execution. As a third judge bench led by the Justice Misra upheld the death sentence awarded to four convicts in brutal 2012 Delhi gang rape Nirbhaya case. Justice Misra has been a strongly upholder of the constitutional value. Judicial creativity has played a decisive role in the realizing the constitutional dream as envisioned by the framers of the constitution, which has been reflected in the several of his landmark judgments. And so, who else than the Mr. Justice Misra can be a better person to speak on the transformative constitutionalism. Now may I invite the Honorable Justice Deepak Misra to deliver a talk on transformative constitutionalism. Over to you, sir.
Professor Parimal Vyas, the Vice Chancellor of Maharaja Sayajirao University, Professor Bhavna Mehta, Dr. Inamdar, Mr. Siddharth Pawar, ladies and gentlemen. At the very outset, I must congratulate the Vice Chancellor for using the phrase judicial creativity instead of judicial activism. Almost 15 years back, I had written an article for the souvenir when the Madhya Pradesh High Court was celebrating its golden jubilee, which related to this in a different way. I titled the article as Hermeneutics of Law. I had propounded in my humble way, there is nothing called judicial activism. The judges of the superior courts take recourse to certain subtle interpretative methods, and they visualize certain rights, and they also take note of the apathy of the executive, and thereafter issue appropriate directions which are within the permissible limits of law. There is a sense of creativity. There is some degree of creativity. I'm really happy that the Vice Chancellor has spoken it from the proper perspective. Today, we are talking about constitutional transformism. First of all, we must understand the concept of a constitutional base. Mere existence of constitution would not usher in the idea of constitutionalism. You have to have the intent. You have to have the respect for constitutional behavior, constitutional values, and the constitutional concept of separation of power. In any progressive constitution, there is the stand, the platform, the base, the foundation that certain institutions are given the power. In our constitution, the power is given to the executive, to the legislature, to the judiciary. The constitution has been trying to put limits on exercise of this power. And there is the propagation of the idea of respecting mutually the other wing's power, because separation of power is the fulcrum of constitutionalism. Now, as a government or a state puts limits on the power of the government. When I say state, I mean all the wings of the state. That is one aspect of governance. The other aspect is to take such measures whereby you protect and pour in more rights to the citizens. There is some erroneous notion that in India, people talk about rights and no one talks about duties. We have a chapter under Article 51A devoted to fundamental duties. That is different. If people are not carrying out their duties, a civilized society cannot exist. I do admit there is a question of degree, but all of us must bear in mind that protection of our fundamental rights, our statutory rights have primacy, and they have to be allowed to hold the center stage. With the passage of time, we are in 2020. We are not in 1950s or 60s. The concept of rights has metamorphosed. When the rights cannot be metamorphosed or transformed by themselves, there has to be a mechanism. It can be by enactment, or it can be by interpretative method. And both enactment and interpretative method have the constitutional acceptance. And therefore, it is the duty of the executing wing to see that the rights declared, instead of criticizing it, to enforce it. There are democracies which have fought for independence, which have fought to come out from the shackles of darkness, of poverty, of misery, of discrimination. And how did they frame their constitution? What was the potency in that constitution? In this context, I'll quote few lines from Professor Clary. He's a US scholar. He says, I quote, long-term project of constitutional enactment, interpretation, and enforcement committed to transforming a country's political and social institutions and power relationships in a democratic, participatory, and egalitarian direction, unquote. Now, he is laying stress on three aspects: the modes, the methods, democratic method, participative method, and the direction must be egalitarian. There is a South African judge who says what the constitutional transformation means. He starts that the judges are the custodian of the constitutional values. They have been given the responsibility to protect human dignity. He is, I must share it with you, emphasizes on quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person. Please try to understand these two concepts. Quality of life of people, enhancement, upliftment of all citizens. The learned judge S.M. Venezin talks about collective of people, and individually talks about free the potential of each person, each individual, each person must be given the due recognition, and his identity must be adequately kindled so that he can realize his freeness. He must realize his potentiality, and that is the duty of the constitutional courts. And that's how the South Africa perceived its constitutionalism changing and the transformative constitutionalism coming in. Chief Justice Langa of South Africa, while talking about South African constitution, says, I quote, "This is a magnificent goal for a constitution to heal the wounds of the past and guide us to a better future. For me, this is the core idea of transformative constitutionalism that we must change," unquote. He connects with the preamble of the interim constitution of South Africa. He said there was a bridge, there's a bridge during the colonial era, and when they got independence, and that transformation has to be constitutionally evolved, and he lays stress on human rights, democracy, peaceful coexistence, development opportunities, and all that, irrespective of caste, color, race, and belief. Look at the powerful words he uses, because South Africa was suffering from apartheid. There is an eminent professor, Professor Theunis Rocks, while talking about transformative constitutionalism, he says, particular interpretative method, one typically associated with the methodology and political commitments of critical legal studies movement in United States is required in order to realize the full transformative potential of the Constitution. Every country has their own vision, but eventually the telescopic vision, the laser beam, leads us to one goal: transform, because we must change, and we must change for good, because there cannot be retrogression in jurisprudence. We must have absolutely spelled out progressive judicial vision. We must have healthy constitutional vision. You see, citizens' right must be given primacy. What do people expect? What does the transformative constitutionalism as a concept or conception expect? The expectation is that seniors, citizens are respected. The rights are respected. The freedom is respected. Self-respect and dignity are respected. I'll give an example of a case. There was a doctor, Ayurvedic doctor in Chhattisgarh. He was involved in certain activities. The police arrested him, kept him in judicial custody. Eventually, he was released. Then he filed a writ petition that while he was in judicial custody, they put a placard on his chest that I have forged my documents and I believe in forgery, to that extent. And High Court directed for an inquiry. In inquiry, it came that such a thing was done, and he was photographed. Such a photograph was produced in the revenue records, but the High Court left it to government. The matter traveled to Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, when there is a finding and there is a mental cruelty, look at a man being asked to put it on chest that I have forged. What will be his anguish? What will be his agony? What will be his sorrow? The court directed compensation because it was a constitutional thought. These doctrines are evolved in 94, but it's evolving further. This further evolution of certain ideas, like stressing on mental cruelty at police station, in police custody, is also a transformative measure of constitutional rights. You see, the preamble of our Constitution deals with equality, liberty, and fraternity. The adjudicators are required to internalize the sense of constitutional morality and the value of liberty. That apart, there has to be the concept of inclusiveness, which has to be entrenched in the social system. You see, in mid-70s, in N.M. Thomas case, Supreme Court said that we have to, as a judicial method, understand the spacious social science approach. Now try to understand what the judges are trying to convey. Spacious social science approach. That is to say, take everyone in. They were talking about reservation, because transforming the society for better is the objective and the fundamental pillar of transformative constitutionalism. Last year, from Karnataka, an issue came with regard to seniority and reservation. The data had been collected. I'm not on facts. The court said as a principle, now I will read this. The Constitution is a transformative document. The realization of the transformative potential rests ultimately in its ability to breathe life and meaning into the abstract concepts. For, above all, the Constitution was intended by the draftsperson to be a significant instrument of bringing about social change in a caste-based feudal society witnessed by centuries of oppression and the discrimination against the marginalized. As our constitutional jurisprudence has evolved, the realization of the transformative potential of the Constitution has been founded on the evolution of equality away from its formal underpinnings to its substantive potential, unquote. Formal underpinning to substantive potential. I was carefully listening to the Vice Chancellor. He was making a distinction between the formality of law, or the positive aspects of law, and the progressive aspect of law. Now, he is from a different faculty, as I learned, but he has really understood. And the court is saying, had said earlier, but it's saying in a different language, that you have to move on, transform from formal underpinning to substantive potential. Mr. Siddharth Pawar, while introducing, had talked about striking down of Section 377 that was done in Natte Singh, Johor. The court took into consideration the realities of life. Prior to this judgment, the transgenders were given the right of a gender. Now here there was a criminal punishment involved under Section 377 of IPC. I had said what nature gives is natural. That apart, man has a choice. But whole thing has to be based on consent. It's because unless you take this minority, unless you take this different kind of people in the complete whole, in the social stream, in the mainstream of the society, there is discrimination. And why should they suffer from this discrimination? And that is what weighed with the court. And the court struck it down. And in that judgment, I can't quote most of the paragraphs. A lot of paragraphs have been reported to articulate the doctrine of transformative constitutionalism, because how it is the duty of to protect the rights of the citizens, and how with the movement of time is never static. Time moves on and we have to move on. We can't stay with the old mindset. The mindset has to improve. The court only guides through law for improvement, for change of the mindset of the society. You are talked about the striking down the provision of Section 497. That was very peculiarly drafted by Mackley. You see, that it will not be adultery if there is consent of the man. That means a woman, a lady, was treated as a chattel, as if she is the property of the man. Strong exception was taken and has to be taken in a democratic body polity where the Constitution rules supreme. No person can be treated as an unperson. I use this word, unperson, unperson, and be regarded as the property of another, consent of the husband. That's one part. The second part, the court stated, why should it be a criminal offense? It has already been a civil wrong. It can be a ground for divorce. That's different. That's a relationship between two people. Why should the criminal offense come in? On those grounds, these are new grounds. These are new platforms, and that is how the transformation takes place. You see, individual liberty is not absolute. There are restrictions, lawful restrictions. That's permissible. But there are certain spheres where voice of a singular individual matters. I'm referring to Safin Jahan's case. Ground was advanced that the lady was brainwashed, indoctrinated, and under the control of the man in a different way. She had been misguided to marry him or to go with him or to stay with him. The court summoned the lady. She admitted in open court, I am married to the man. I want to stay with my husband. A point was canvassed whether her consent was voluntary or it was taken by force. She said, no, I'm giving this consent voluntarily, and I'm here and I'm speaking what I feel and what is my desire. The court treated it as final, because if she says he is married to X and X says he is married to the lady, who can dispute, and why should anyone be allowed to dispute? The parents may feel bad, but we have to be guided by law. This was a different kind of litigation. That is why I referred. It's not a normal habeas corpus matter. Now, quite recently, the judgment came whereby the court allowed the woman to function at the commission in the military. That was not given to them. The court used the principle there cannot be discrimination. I will just read two lines. Look at the analysis made by the court. If society holds strong beliefs about gender roles, that men are socially dominant, physically powerful, and the breadwinners of the family, and that women are weak and physically submissive and primarily caretakers confined to a domestic atmosphere, it's unlikely that there would be a change in the mindsets. So the court is giving emphasis of the change of the mindset. This change of mindset in the society has to evolve. The court's guide, because that is the constitutional value, and that is the constitutional expectation from the citizens. That is the constitutional behavior. Now I will refer to one more judgment. There is in that Khap Panchayat case, two persons appeared. They took permission of the court to speak. The court permitted. It was conversed. that we are protecting, we are guiding them. The court reacted that, who are you? Why should you come in? They are grown up. They don't need your guidance. You are in fact interfering. You are killing people. Don't do that. Misguiding people. Anyway, the court said all those cup and chairs are illegal. Another aspect of transformative constitutionalism I would like to highlight, because I as a person and a judge, as a former judge, I believe dignity of a person matters the most. In Bikash Jadhav, we emphasized never ignore the dignity of the dead, because in that case, the body was mutilated in such a manner nobody could identify, and the mother could identify with immense difficulty. Dignity of the dead may be a new thought, but when you have to transform the society, there has to be a feeling towards the dignity of the dead. In conclusion, I would say the purpose of transformative constitutionalism is to sow the seeds of principles of freedom, equality, liberty, and fraternity, and elevate therein the principles of justice. The interpretative method will really transform the Constitution and make it a dynamic and living document. Lastly, I must admit, when something is to happen, it happens. I could not go to Vadodara, to the university, but I am happy this webinar has been fructified. I'm delighted, and I must appreciate the follow-up attitude of Dr. Bhavna Mehta and the young man, Siddhartha Pawar. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that motivating talk. I'm sure students have learned a lot from it, and academicians too, they have learned a lot from it. The Constitution is definitely not just a piece of paper, and it is one of the tools, instruments of transformation. So thank you so much, sir. It is believed that the future belongs to those who are curious and those who can ask questions which most people hesitate to. Keeping this in mind, we have organized a question-answer session with our participants. Our dynamic webinar coordinator, Mr. Umang Modi, who is also an assistant professor with the Faculty of Law, has been constantly keeping an eye for such interesting and innovative questions. I invite him to moderate the question-answer session.
Thank you, Fiona ma'am. Thank you, Your Lordship, for it was an enriching, enlightened session on transformative constitutionalism, which is relatively new concept in India. I am sure participants found this discussion informative, relevant, and thought-provoking. As I could read from the chat box many positive comments, the participants have also put their question in the chat box. I shall be dealing with the few of them. So, sir, first question is, what is difference between constitutional activism and constitutional creativity?
When I commenced my address, I said, your Vice Chancellor has used the word constitutional creativity. I made a distinction. Now that a question has come, I'm answering it. When you are engaged in constitutional creativity, you read the text of the Constitution, the context, have respect for the spirit behind the Constitution, constitutional practices, constitutional values, norms, and also constitutional morality. You also respect the doctrine of separation of power. You see, I'll give an example. Supposing the government frames a scheme and the same is not being followed or implemented. The court, somebody approaches the court in a writ petition, the High Court. The benefits conferred by a scheme is fundamentally connected, say, with Article 21. Why shouldn't the citizen have? The court persuades the executive to take it up, and sometimes issues direction in that regard. That is progressive interpretation of Article 21, and to also to see effective implementation. Some may argue that it's not the court's duty to see the implementation, but when there is a right, by mere declaration, it will not do. That we can call for a report, we can see, we can scrutinize, and we can also do the remedial, take the steps for remedial measure. Similarly, this jurisprudence has developed since late 70s and grew in 80s, and now it is growing. Like one Chief Justice entertained a letter and took appropriate action. This is called epistolary jurisdiction, entertaining the letter as a writ petition. Somebody may say it is judicial activism. No, it is judicial. It's a judicial progression which has the sanction of the Constitution. Actually, judiciary is translating constitutional empathy for the citizen.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you, sir. We have another question regarding current crisis of corona. That as we know that Constitution India is a living document. So to cope up with newly emerged challenges during the pandemic, how our Constitution will transform itself?
I think some matters relating to corona are sub judice before the Supreme Court. So I'll refrain myself from saying anything in a sub judice matter.
Thank you, sir. We have another question, that what does Indian constitutional play roles towards this marginalized people in transforming constitutionalism?
That's what I talked. You see, when I talked about, just a minute. When I talked about 2019 Pavitra 2 case, when they upheld the Karnataka amendment, that's inclusiveness. The marginalized people are getting certain benefits there. And many legislations are made for them. You see, Article 17, which constitutionally, very rare, deals with untouchability, the court protects it. The court is the court always stands by the marginalized people, be it inclusiveness, be it 377, be it the untouchability rights, be it with regard to behavior because the Atrocities Act, everywhere. And all these issues, the legislature had passed the legislation, but by the interpretative process, many things have been done. And the court has seen to it at certain juncture that they are adequately and properly implemented, right?
Yeah, thank you, sir. We have another question. It has been seen in the recent judgment of Supreme Court, the court is relying more on sociological jurisprudence in aggressive manner and not relying on the positivist jurisprudence in many cases. Well, excessive resort to sociological jurisprudence is raising question on people's representation. So how excessive use of sociological jurisprudence is questioning popular sovereignty and question of judicial activities? What degree of judicial restraint is required in this?
While referring to Thomas case I said mid-70s, late 1976, the judgment is, the court said that they must adopt special scientific social approach. Special social science approach. These are the actual words. Special social science approach. That was 1976, almost 44 years back. I talked about transformation. Transformation stands in contradistinction to staticness, and therefore the court on certain occasions take recourse to this social science approach, which the gentleman is possibly calling social jurisprudence. You see, you must appropriately understand the popular sovereignty. That's with regard to they can topple the government when the right moment comes. But always remember, in India, it is the constitution that is supreme, and that is why we have constitutional sovereignty and nothing else.
Thank you, sir. We will take last question. In the political circus, the circle view is that the court should not involve itself in deciding political question, which can be best handled by political branches. So, in case of religious matter, what kind of views on the your views on this issue? Whether Supreme Court of India by invoking,
Please tell the gentleman who has asked the question. This issue is still sub judice. It is sub judice, I know it. How can I comment on a sub judice matter?
Okay, sir. So then, okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for taking time out to answer the queries of the participants. We are nearly at the end of this webinar, and before we close, we will take a few minutes to extend our gratitude to all the people who have spent days and nights working towards making this national webinar a possibility. I invite Dr. Reena Bhatia, Director, Institute of Leadership and Governance, and Joint Director of this webinar to extend the vote of thanks. Dr. Bhatia has been serving the university at the Department of Clothing and Textiles, Faculty of Community, Faculty of Family and Community Sciences for the last 25 years. She is the Dean of Students and Dean of Sports. She has over 30 paper presentations in both national and international forums. She has authored a book on the introduction to clothing and textiles. She has constantly supported and motivated the team who are involved for organizing this webinar series. Madam.
Reena, unmute yourself. Yeah.
Thank you, Fiona, and thank you, Bhavna ma'am. Namaskar. It is my pleasure and privilege to extend the vote of thanks on behalf of the Faculty of Law and the Institute of Leadership and Governance to one and many who have extended their support to the third edition of National Youth Summit 3, that is with the theme Transformative Constitutionalism. We wholeheartedly acknowledge and appreciate the benign presence of our patron, Professor Parimal Vyasji, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of our university. We are blessed and overwhelmed by your valuable opening remarks, sir, your constant motivation and support extended for all our endeavors. We remain indebted to our esteemed Chief Guest, Honorable Justice Mr. Deepak Mishra ji, the former Chief Justice of India, Supreme Court of India, for humbly accepting our invitation and to provide the remarkable insights into the theme of today's webinar, and also patiently providing answers and the food for thought to our young, energetic participants. Thank you so much, sir. We extend our affectionate thanks to Professor Bhavna Mehta ji, the webinar director and Dean OST Faculty of Law, to bring the summit to you in association with the Institute of Leadership and Governance, and perennially guiding the team with her knowledge, wisdom, and experience. We are extremely delighted and obliged to have the vision of the worthy and dynamic personality of our MSU Parivar, Shri Jigar Inamdar ji, the Senate and Syndicate member, and also the advisor to ILG and for the summit, to bring forth lucidly the significance of this National Youth Summit. His presence is enough to make the team feel empowered and their contribution more meaningful. We extend a warm thanks to the Senate and Syndicate members for their constant and encouragement. A special gratitude to the webinar conveners, Dr. Archana Gadikar, Mr. Umang Modi, and Fiona Dias, who's also moderated the webinar for us. The very young and self-motivated student coordinator, the advocate Siddharth Pawar, for their warmth and cooperation in organizing this webinar with full care and commitment. We acknowledge the involvement of our thoughtful and committed team members of the teaching and the non-teaching staff who have carefully examined each step taken towards the summit and implemented effective measures to accomplish all the scheduled tasks. I would like to thank Ms. Jankana Jani and Mr. Achal Parekh for providing us the technical assistance. Special thanks are due to the communication cell of the university for making great posters for the event and also assisted in promoting the webinar through all its official social media handles. Special thanks are extended to the media for covering the event and also to the in-house media team for providing various resources for the same. The presence of our enthusiastic, energetic participants who have come here from various parts of the country and beyond is joyfully acknowledged, be it in the Zoom room or those live on official Facebook pages of the university, the Faculty of Law, and the Institute of Leadership and Governance. Hope you found this webinar useful. We look forward to your unfailing attendance for the upcoming webinars too, organized both by the faculty as well as the Institute. Apologies if I have failed to acknowledge and thank anyone who has been instrumental in making this event a success. Thank you, each one of you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay happy. Thank you. Over to you, Fiona.
Thank you. I think with this, we can end the webinar. I request all of you to just wait, all the participants to just wait for 5 minutes. We will soon inform you about the feedback link for the certificates.
Your Lordship, thank you so much for joining us. It was really a pleasure to have you. And we hope that you will visit our university sometime. Today it was virtually, but physically also we would like to have you in
it would have been a great pleasure if I would have been able to make it. But
yeah, we understand, but maybe some other time, sir, when situation improves.
Yeah.
Thank
you. We should pray God that everything becomes normal and we would be able to invite Honorable Chief Justice Deepak Mishra ji at our university. That is what we are looking for.
Absolutely.
And, we are confident, sir. Please give us your blessings and guidance so that we can strengthen the law education in this.
Now, all of us must pray to the Almighty for return of normalcy, so that actually we can move.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
It will be a great pleasure to go to your university, and I must say that.
So you're most welcome, and we look forward for you to be with us in person. And so nice of you, sir. Once again, we express our sincere thanks to you for a very, very inspiring and motivational address. I think it was a lot of, motivational. It was, in fact, it was an intellectual intercourse, and I really admire. I hope the way you have handled all questions, I think so patiently. I think heads off to you, sir. Namaskar, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, VC sir, for joining us. We are really happy that you could make it today. Thank you.
I was with you people only. It's always a pleasure.
You, sir. Thank you.
Namaskar.
Yeah. Bye, Reena. Thank you.